Right, Greece's finance ministry says it will not meet a deadline on public sector reforms by the end of this week. The Greek government has already missed a June deadline to transfer 12,500 civil servants into a so-called labour mobility scheme. Athens is currently awaiting its next €8.1 billion aid tranche, expected to be released at Monday's Eurogroup meeting. I'm delighted to welcome to the show around the desk here Nikos Dendias, who is Greece's Minister for Public Order and Citizen Protection. Sir, thank you very much indeed for joining us. Very nice to see you.
Thank you for inviting me.
Let's talk a bit about the broader issues first of all, before we can talk about your particular governmental remit as well. I'm going to ask you very bluntly. I've spent a lot of time in Greece over the crisis and I've been very warmly received, but both by government and indeed the population, who seem to me to have a very strong handling of their own current crisis and the own fallibilities that Greece has had in creating the current situation. What I think is adding to that, though, is the fact that time after time the government is failing to deliver, whichever government it is failing to deliver on promises to the Troika partners as well, and that is adding momentum to the crisis. How would you respond to that, sir?
Well, frankly, I wouldn't agree with you. Okay, there are failures, but you assume that the program that has been practically imposed on us is perfect, which is far from the case. It's being criticized by IMF, it's being criticized by governments all around the world. It has created contraction beyond expectations, so we are trying our best. Of course, we're not perfect, but let me take you to the positive side of events. Budget surpluses 2014 is something that it's obvious that will happen. We have been able to privatize firms, which was not expected from us in the past. We did achieve that. Tourism, record year this year. Social stability, no public unrest, stable government. I mean, those are achievements that the Greek society has managed to perform.
There has been some privatisation, but you're way behind on what was promised originally, sir.
True, promised on figures, but it's hardly our fault, in the sense that if you put a figure on an asset and then you put it on the market, and the market does not pay the same amount for that asset, that's hardly your fault. You have to take into account the overall economic situation around Europe.
I mean, one of the biggest problem always has been, the ability to collect taxes and so forth, and the amount of the government spending in terms of the employment, private sector not expanding as rapidly as the government sector over the last many years. Do you think that that is going to change in the next couple of years? I mean, it's been so reluctant to get anything done.
You're right in the sense that the figures are not great, but on the other hand, please be kind enough to appreciate the overall contraction of the economy was enormous. 30% contraction of an economy over the last year, more than 5.5% per year. It's unique within the modern economic European history, apart from cases of war or natural catastrophes of huge scale. So how could you expect really a huge improvement of tax collection when the economy contracts in such a scale? But we'll do better. We will do better in the future. I'm confident about it.
Yeah, and again, it's very similar to the situation we were talking about Portugal. Efforts are being made on the ground. No one is denying that. But it's efforts to achieve what as the optimum result. And when I look at the plan for Portugal, which has a 2015 debt-to-GDP target of over 130%, and then I look at the plan for Greece, which has a 2020 target of somewhere in the same region, I think the desired goal from all parties, whether it be what has been agreed with the Greek government or the Troika or all in tandem, is unsatisfactory. The plan itself to get to such high levels of debt still just doesn't seem tenable to me, sir.
Well, the plan is hardly our fault. Everybody knows that...
Greece does have its own share of the blame. So when you say it's hardly our fault, the Greek debt levels were created by Greeks. They weren't created by the Troika, sir.
Well, there are two ways to see it. Yes, I won't say we're not responsible. We're responsible, but we're co-responsible in the sense that I'm certain and sure that the European institutions were seeing that bubble being created, and nobody really warned us quite highly that, look, guys, be more careful here. I'm not saying that we're not at fault. Let's be absolutely clear about that. We are at fault, but there are others at fault as well. And this really the problem here is not to appreciate who is at fault, is to create a situation which will have a stable European society, that Greece will remain in the euro, will remain in Europe, and will go forward.
So do we need a reset in the relationships between Southern Europe and Northern Europe then? If you're talking about others who have their fair share of blame, you must be pointing the finger at the country which has provided, and when I'm standing at my camera point by the Parthenon, it is German automobiles, it is Volkswagens, it is Mercedes, it is German exports into Greece, which I guess where you're pointing the finger of others who have their...
Well, frankly, I'm not pointing the finger on anybody. I'm just trying to appreciate
But
the
if it's
situation.
not just the Greeks' fault, sir, whose fault is it as well as Greece?
Well, I see Europe as a family, and as Europeans and friends and partners, so it's everybody's fault.
Right.
But again, the main question is how do we go forward, not start a blame game between us.
It's as dysfunctional as my family, sir. Let's move on and talk about your own ministry, public order and citizen protection. When I'm in Greece as well, and I'm going to say this, and when my colleagues Julia and Carolyn have been guests of your country as well, we've seen some disputes on the street. We've seen peaceful protests, we've seen violent protests, but it's the violent protests that the international media too often pick up on. But it does seem to be actually, throughout this crisis, that has been a relatively small part of the backlash against what has been going on as well. How has that been maintained, and do you think there is a danger that this will actually become larger spread?
Well, I have to say for the last year that I have been in this ministry, there were not any violent protests in Athens. And I think we were unique among the South European capitals on that. I think Athens was the most peaceful Southern European capital for the last 12 months. And that has not to do with me, although efforts have been going on from the Greek police. Mainly has to do with the fact that society, the Greek society, has appreciated the magnitude of the task in front of us and what we have to achieve. And since it's a national goal, it's a national target, everybody is trying his or her best.
So I'm going to give you a bit of time to speak about one of the other key issues you want to as well. We've got about 50 seconds left on programme. Immigration is a major issue, and it's something you want to actually just highlight as well.
Well, immigration is of cardinal importance. It's of cardinal importance for Greece, it's of cardinal importance for Europe. And I have to say clearly that we need much more European support in terms of funding, in terms of the structure that we had to put there. We have done a huge effort in the last 12 months. We're able to control the land borders, which are not just the land borders of Greece, are the land borders of Europe. There's zero passing through those borders now. It's only now the problem has moved to the Aegean, but we need much more European solidarity on that.
So all too short a chat, but look forward to speaking to you either in Athens or in London next time you're passing through. Nikos Dendias is the Greek Minister for Public Order and Citizen Protection.